Om Sarashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Om Parameshwara. Okay. Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome back. You can hear me okay? This sound system has been a little funny. Welcome also to the many students who regularly attend these classes online. Welcome to you all. We'll continue today our study of Uddhava Gita. This section opened with a question from Uddhava. Very intelligent question. He said, people get it in general that worldly efforts never culminate in perfect peace and contentment. Pretty much everyone, if you think about it, you get it. You just know that you make some progress and you fall back. There's some positives, some negatives. Life is like that, and we're all mature enough to know it. So Uddhava's very clever question is, if people get it, why do they continue to pursue this futile search for permanent contentment, lasting peace and joy through their worldly activities? They get it, but they don't get it. Sri Krishna's response, as we saw in the last class or two, was to discuss the effect of the three gunas on our behavior, especially tamas and rajas. Tamas, the guna of darkness and ignorance, is responsible for the failure to recognize that what you're really looking for is here now. Because of that non-recognition, due to tamas, we then are compelled, and here comes rajas. First is the non-recognition of your true nature, due to tamas. Then comes the compulsion to seek outside, which is an effect of rajas. And in that context, Sri Krishna is talking about how to overcome rajas and tamas. He's in the next verse, I think he'll talk about meditation. But here he's still leading up to it, so let's pick up the thread where we left off. Rajastamobhyam yadapi, Rajastamobhyam yadapi, Vidwan vikshiptadhi punaha, Vidwan vikshiptadhi punaha, Atandrito mano yunjan, Atandrito mano yunjan, Dosha drishtirna sajjate, Dosha drishtirna sajjate. Rajas tamobhyam, due to rajas and tamas, tarapi vidwan, even a wise person. Here, wise person is not enlightened person. Often it does mean in this context, but we're not. You'll see why we're not. We're talking about a person who is wise, but who is not yet enlightened. So that wise person vikshipta dhihi, can have his buddhi, mind, vikshipta, distracted, rajas tamo bhyam, by rajas and tamas. So even though you're wise, you can be distracted by rajas and tamas. So this really goes back to Uddhava's question, doesn't it? Why don't people get it? They're smart enough to know that you can't get perfect peace and contentment through mere worldly activities, yet they continue. And here's a direct answer to that question, and that is vidwan tarapi. Even though they're wise, somewhat wise enough to know the limitations of what you can accomplish through worldly life, even then, vikshipta dhihi, they can be distracted. Why? Tamas and rajas. Tamas refers, again, tamas in general, the guna of darkness and lethargy and ignorance, but in our present context, it refers specifically to the so-called veil of ignorance which prevents you from recognizing who you truly are, that so-called inner divinity, your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, already present, already the truth of yourself, but unrecognized due to ignorance, tamas. And then rajas kicks in, to use the American expression. It kicks in the sense that you now find yourself compelled to chase after things which you think can bring you happiness and contentment, and you find yourself compelled to run away from things that you think are antithetical to your happiness and contentment. So we spend our lives suffering under this compulsion of raga and dvesha. Raga, chasing after what we want. Dvesha, running away from what we don't want. And when we talk about moksha as liberation, freedom, that freedom has many meanings, one of which is freedom from this compulsion. How free are you really if your behavior is compelled by raga and dvesha? Think about it. This is so significant. People think they are free, I can do whatever I want, but they end up doing what their ragas and dveshas tell them to do, is what it ends up to. In prior classes, we've compared raga and dvesha to like two bosses who have their offices set up nicely in a corner of your mind, and they call all the shots. What kind of freedom is that if you're constantly being bossed around, so to speak, by raga dvesha? My guru was very fond of the term inner freedom. Obviously, inner freedom takes place when you get rid of those two bosses from their offices in the corner of your mind. Get rid of them, kick them out. Presumably, you're part of the corporate board, so you have the power to fire them. Even bosses can be fired, right? By a corporate board. Fire them! And that's a message given by Sri Krishna here. So, but now the question becomes for this wise person who is still struggling with those two bosses in the mind, raga and dvesha, what to do until they've been fired. How to manage in the meanwhile. Definitely by the time you're enlightened, raga dvesha is long gone. But now the question is what to do in the meanwhile. And that word punaha gives you exactly that sense. In the meanwhile, what should this wise person do, wise person who's not yet enlightened, that wise person, manoha yunjan, should restrain his mind atandritaha, unfailingly, without... How's that? All right. I will look at our PA system over the week, fix this up. So, the wise person should manaha, what is the verb he uses? Yunjan, controlling your mind. That verb, just go down. Okay. That verb is the same root as from which yoga comes. Interesting. Kind of hinting at meditation, which Sri Krishna will introduce in the next verse. So controlling your mind, why? Notice that he didn't say controlling your behavior, because once you're in the car, what was the metaphor last week? Was going to the car dealership to buy your brand new car, even though your spouse doesn't want you to. So by the time you're in the car, driving to the car dealership, it's too late. You have to stop yourself before then. By the time you're engaged in the action, it's too late. Therefore, manas yunjan, controlling your mind. Because if you decide not to get into your car and drive to the car dealership, if you decide in advance not to fall prey to the compulsion of raga and dvesha, then there's no need to control your behavior. Controlling the mind is in control of your behavior, so control your mind. I don't need to tell you this. Every intelligent person knows this, although we don't always do this. I remember my mother always, when I was a child, think before you jump. Think before you jump. I jump. Then think. As children do, and even some older children do. Adult children, you get the idea. So, and to do this atandritaha means without getting tired. And a good translation in this context would be unfailingly. To constantly be alert to how this compulsivity can affect our lives, can affect our behavior, to be mindful. That's such an important word. You all know it well. It's used in meditation all the time. And in this context, we're not talking about meditation yet. That topic will come. But here, mindful means paying attention to what you're doing, paying attention to what your choices are in life, in particular. And when I say that, it just launches me into such makes me recognize this really, really important topic. Every choice you make in life counts. Even little ones, they all count. If we fail to reflect before making those decisions, if we make our decisions very casually, even for little ones, if we are not mindful, if we are not alert, the poor decisions we make add up very quickly and lead to serious consequences in life. So this word atandritaha, without being negligent, with full energy and attention, one should control the mind, which is going to lead to meditation in the next verse. And one more aspect here, and that is dosha drishtihi. So controlling your mind, and by this particular practice, which I'll explain in just a moment, a practice called dosha drishti, through these practices of controlling your mind and through the practice of dosha drishti, na sajjate. The person is not attached, And in our context, the person is no longer compelled by raga dvesha. The person breaks free from those compulsions of raga dvesha. So controlling your mind is an obvious one. What is this dosha drishti? Dosha here, we're not talking about the famous South Indian food, dosas. Here, dosha means defect. Dosha drishti means seeing the defects, seeing the downside. And we're not talking about seeing your defects. You see your defects plenty. And if you, pardon the joke, if you don't see your defects clearly, your spouse will help you. Or your children or your parents, somebody will be there to assist you. Anyway, we're not talking about your defects. The dosha here is the defects of whatever it is you feel compelled to pursue. Like in our last class, we gave that extended example of being pursued. This keeps going up and down, doesn't it? In our last class, we gave that extended metaphor of being compelled to buy a new car. Even though your old car is perfectly good, you want to have the joy of the new car, you want to look good to all your neighbors and all of that. Anyway, for all the wrong reasons, you want to buy this new car and you feel compelled to do so. Here, dosha drishti, this is I don't know if you've heard this expression, but it turns out to be a very central practice for followers of not just Advaita Vedanta, but followers of every spiritual path. And the practice is to reflect on the defects or shortcomings of what you can accomplish or gain through your worldly efforts. Specifically, in this current metaphor, it means to recognize if you buy that new car, first of all, if you're buying the new car for the wrong reasons, in other words, to impress your neighbor, after you buy this new car, your neighbor will buy an even better car, right? That's how it works. And if you buy the car for the joy of getting into that shiny new car with that new car smell and all of that, after a month, that car is dirty and well lived in, so to speak, and it's lost its sheen, so to speak. It's no longer new, it's no longer special to you. How quickly we outgrow the newness of something. You get a new gadget, you get a new phone, and for the first few days it's wonderful. After that, it's just a phone, right? That's the same for any gadget. At the beginning, it's new, it's wonderful, but very quickly, the sheen of newness wears off and is just another thing. That's dosha drishti, to see the defects or shortcomings of whatever it is. Also, going back to our car example, last week I mentioned the fact that you're not, having bought that new car, you now have $400 or $500 a month car payments that are going to go on for how many years? Long time to pay off that expensive car. These are examples of dosha drishti. Too often we get, what is the word? Entranced. We get sucked, to use American English, we get sucked in to these images. Everything looks so wonderful. And when you see on TV, all the advertisement, any product looks so attractive. Who could not want it, is the idea. By the way, just be forewarned that with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, you're going to see the quality of advertising is going to get even more powerful, more compelling. That will be a primary use of AI, is for marketing, guaranteed. Which means if you think commercials are cool today, they are going to be so much more compelling within a year. It's happening very, very quickly. And the point I'm making is it's really easy to fall prey to all of that. I mean, when they spend millions and millions of dollars producing a 30-second commercial, you can be sure that they hire one or more psychologists and marketing experts to help shape and define that commercial so that it's not just visually attractive, but it's got some psychological hooks in it, which easy to fall prey. They're designed like that. You know that. So this dosha drishti is a crucial practice, and some of you are good at it. Some of you may not be so good at it, but it's a specific practice in which before you purchase something, before you pursue something, you reflect on the downside. Instead of just being lured by the attractiveness, you consider both sides of the coin, so to speak. Specifically, dosha drishti means to reflect on the defects of any pursuit before you get drawn into it by your raga or dvesha. So, and I scribble all over this and make notes to myself. Nice. This idea of dosha drishti, it's like if you get a strong desire, how to get rid of that strong desire. For example, I remember many, many years ago, I had a strong desire. It says, wouldn't it be nice to have a cottage up in the Himalayas? I love the Himalayas. I've spent a lot of time up in the mountains. And I thought, well, maybe if I had a cottage, my own cottage, high up in the Himalayas, then I could take vacations there, I could go there and spend some quiet time. That was in my mind not very long because of this practice of dosha drishti. Because it was first of all, the first dosha is the complexity of getting anything done in India, the complexity of getting anything built. Not really a financial issue, but the governmental problems and the bureaucratic problems and the logistical problems. That's really a headache. So one dosha was 2 years of trying to figure out how to solve all these various problems associated with getting the cottage built. Then there was a deal breaker. Suppose I was willing to deal with all that for 2 years. Then the last part of the dosha drishti, which really worked for me, is to imagine myself in this lovely cottage high in the Himalayas. I can see the Ganga below me. I can see the snow-covered mountains to the north. Just lovely, absolutely lovely. And then, not so far away, I hear boom, 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 la, 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 Hindi music. Bollywood music. Because next to the cottage is a farm. They have terraced farms up in the mountains, and the farmer is out there with his bullock and on his plow he's got a boombox, and he likes Bollywood music, and so all day long the farmer is enjoying his Bollywood music, destroying my serenity up in the cottage. I'm being on this. Actually, I did this as an exercise. I thought about the cottage. I thought about the 2 years of nonsense to get the cottage built, and then I was still, what do they say, on the fence, until I thought about the boombox. So who cares? This is it. This is dosha drishti. You can apply this in your life in so many ways. It's really, really a powerful and helpful practice. Okay, let's continue. Apramatto nuyunjita, apramatto nuyunjita, mano mai arpayan chanaihi, mano mai arpayan chanaihi, anirvinno yata kalam, anirvinno yata kalam, jita shwasa jita sanaha, jita shwaso. Good. So previously he said, control your mind. Manaha yunjan. So he's talking here not of the dosha drishti, I talked enough about it. So here we're talking about how to restrain the mind. Do you think meditation might help? That's what he says. He says that anuyunjita, you should fix your mind. Anuyunjita manas. Manaha. Manas or manaha becomes mano due to grammar rules. You should fix your mind. Fix your mind on what? Mayi, Sri Krishna says. On me. Fix your mind on me. How? Apramattaha. Being completely diligent, without ever being negligent, without ever being lazy. You should fix your mind on me. Mayi, arpayan chanaihi. And arpayan, holding your mind there, fixing your mind, shanaihi, gradually. Gradually training your mind to remain fixed on me without apramattaha, without wandering away. So this sounds surprisingly like chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna gave very similar advice to Arjuna. He's giving the same kind of advice now to Uddhava about how to meditate. And he says, you should meditate on me. And those of you who attended the classes on Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, you know that when Sri Krishna says on me, he's not talking about this avatara, the one who has a flute, the one who has a crown, the one who sometimes has 4 arms. He's not talking about that one at all. When he says meditate on me, he means meditate on my presence within you. He said that again and again in Bhagavad Gita, and he says it here also in this Uddhava Gita, that you should meditate on me, which means to meditate on that so-called inner divinity. In Vedanta, we call Satchidananda Atma, your true self. So here, we get the sense that this process of meditation is not merely to control your mind, it's part of a process of spiritual growth. You're turning your attention towards your true self, Satchidananda Atma, which is part of the practice of Atma Vichara, self-inquiry, which is the main practice of Advaita Vedanta. But in our present context, Uddhava is wondering, how can I, people get misled, how can we avoid all this? Sri Krishna says, you have to control your mind and learn how to cultivate control of your mind by practice of meditation. A complete aside here, but an important one. When you were a student in school, even later in university, how many classes did you take that taught you how to use your mind? It's interesting. I can still remember, by the way, I was a student back in the 1970s, engineering student back in the 1970s. We actually had a class on how to use a slide rule. You don't even know what a slide rule is. before the advent of calculators, we had to do all of our calculations on these pieces of bamboo that slid back and forth. And they were amazing instruments, a little tricky to use, not terribly accurate, but they worked. This thing is really going up and down. Anyway, we'll cope with it for the rest of the class. So, isn't it practical for an engineering student to have a class on how to use a slide rule? Absolutely practical. So, wouldn't it be equally practical for an engineering student or any student to have a class on how to use your mind? Practical. Why aren't those classes taught? They're not taught. I don't want to... Little tricky topic, because some... I just mentioned this. I was just reading about this. This transcendental meditation tried to introduce their techniques into schools for the sake of training the mind and creating calmness, which sounded like a very noble project. TM organization wanted to introduce their meditation practice into schools. The problem is that, I don't want to say it roughly, but the fact is they lied. They told the schools that this was a secular practice. Transcendental meditation, as you know, is mantra japa. Mantra japa uses mantras addressed to different deities. Mantra japa is a important Hindu practice. The problem is they misrepresented that practice to the schools. They actually got in trouble for doing that, not surprisingly. The schools figured it out, and it got very, very messy. So I'm not suggesting that we should teach some kind of Hindu form of meditation in school, but there are completely secular ways of practicing meditation. In fact, at the same time that TM was coming up, maybe a little bit before, there was a psychologist in Harvard University who was researching Herbert Benson. Some of you may know that name. This is back in the 60s, that he proposed meditation not using a Hindu mantra, meditation using the word one, O-N-E. And he found that one works very well for meditation. So instead of Om, not bad, one, it works. This was his proposal. My point, very simply, and pardon me for the aside, but training your mind should be taught. And you know that I rarely use that word? I'm using it now. Training your mind should be taught in school at appropriate levels. You know, for young students, it should be taught at that level. For college students, it should be taught at a higher level. But some forms of meditation and how to deal with your mind should absolutely be part of any curriculum. Here, of course, we're not talking about any kind of secular practice of religion or any secular practice of meditation, but rather a Hindu practice based on Uddhava Gita, part of Bhagavata Purana. So therefore, Sri Krishna says, meditate on me. And he concludes, how should you meditate on me? Anirvinaha, without getting tired, without getting bored, without getting exasperated. The story that's usually used to describe this is, you may have heard this story. A bird's eggs are swept away into the ocean, and the bird wants to retrieve its eggs. So what does it do? It wades into the ocean, dips its beak in the water, and flings its head to throw a drop of water up on shore. And then it does it again and again and again. The story goes on, but it's a good example of the determination. In this case, a mother's determination to rescue her children, but metaphorically, that commitment to meditation. And the repetition of drop after drop after drop represents the basic process of learning many forms of meditation, which means when your mind wanders, bring it back. Mind wanders again, bring it back again and again and again, like that bird. Drop after drop after drop. Meditation means bring your mind back again and again and again. Yatha kalam, for as long as you can, you bring your mind back again and again and again. Also, jita asanaha. Jita shwasaha. Shwasa is breath. Jita shwasa is a very clear reference to the practice of pranayama, yogic breathing exercises, which can be a really important part of meditation. And not just breathing exercises, jita asanaha. The manner of being seated should also be jita, controlled, proper. So seated properly, practicing proper breathing exercises, Sri Krishna says, meditate on me. Now, this topic concludes. Etavan yoga hadishto, etavan yoga hadishto, machishyai sanakadibihi, machishyai sanakadibihi, sarvato manaha krishya, sarvato manaha krishya, mayadha veshyate yatha, Dhaveshyate yatha. Etavan yoga. This yoga here means practice of meditation, right? This yoga, this practice of meditation, adishtaha, was taught, has been taught. Taught by whom? Mat shishyaihi, by my disciples. Amazing. This yoga has been taught by my disciples. Which disciples? Sanakadibihi. So Sanaka is one of the 4 Manasaputras, 4 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma. They're said to have taken birth, taken existence at the very beginning of the cycle of creation. Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. In some context, Sanat Sujata. So these are the 4 mind-born sons of Brahma who are Lord Krishna's students. Say what? Lord Krishna is living in the current kalpa, but the 4 mind-born sons came 2 kalpas before. In the Satya kalpa, what is the Treta kalpa? I think is I'm not good at all this mythology. Anyway, in the very first kalpa, we have the birth of the sons of Brahmaji, and here we are at the end of the 3rd kalpa, about to begin the Kali Yuga, and it's at this time that Sri Krishna says, they were my students. And you can imagine that Uddhava is going to wonder about this, just like Arjuna wondered. In the 4th chapter, Sri Krishna says that long ago I taught these secret teachings of yoga to God in the form of the sun. Means at the beginning of time. And so Arjuna says, how did you do that? And we're going to see exactly the same scenario play out here with Uddhava. Let's finish this first. So, Sri Krishna says that this yoga, this meditation practice was taught by my students. What kind of meditation practice? A meditation in which manaha akrishya, you withdraw your mind, akrishya, to withdraw your mind, sarvataha, from all distractions, and mayi, on me or in me, aveshyate. You merge your mind in me. The word hidden there is adha. Adha properly, correctly. So they taught, my students, Sanakadi, taught this practice of yoga about how to how to withdraw your mind from all directions, all distractions, and fix your mind on me. And not surprisingly, Uddhava says, what would you, if Uddhava spoke American English, what would he say? What? Whatever. Or if he spoke Hindi, kya hai? Anyway, he's speaking nice Sanskrit here, so let's see what he says in Sanskrit. Uddhava vacha, Uddhava vacha. Yeah. Yada tvam yog. Yada tvam sanakadibhyo, yada tvam sanakadibhyo, yena rupena keshava, yena rupena keshava, yogamadishtavanetata, yogamadishtavanetata, rupamichhami veditam, rupamichhami veditam. Yada, way back when, tvam, you, when you taught sanakadibhyaha, when you imparted this knowledge unto your disciples, Sanaka and the other mind-born sons of Brahma. Uddhava's question has two parts here. First of all, Keshava, O Arjuna, O Krishna, yena rupena, in what form? What was your, I'll paraphrase, what was your form at that time when you taught this meditation practice to Sanaka, etc.? Obviously, it couldn't have been the current form as Sri Krishna. This was long before that particular incarnation. Second part of the question is about yogam adishtavan etat. And what is etat? This yogam, what is the yoga that adishtavan that you taught? Two-part question. What was your form when you taught this yoga? Second part, what was the nature of that yoga, the nature of that teaching that you taught? That rupam ichhami veditum, I want to know this. And these verses we'll just see quickly. Not much teaching here, just more story. Shri Bhagavanu vacha, Shri Bhagavanu vacha, putra hiranya garbhasya, putra hiranya garbhasya, manasa sanakadaya, manasa sanakadaya, prapachu pitaram sukshmam, prapachu pitaram sukshmam, yogasya ekantikim gatam. Sri Bhagavan, the Blessed Lord, Uvacha, he said, he replied to Uddhava, he said, in response to the question, Putraha, the sons, Hiranyagarbhasya. Here, Hiranyagarbha means Lord Brahma. In Advaita Vedanta, it's used in some technical ways as well. But here, it just means Lord Brahma. One thing it never means is golden egg. That's the literal meaning of the word, Hiranyagarbha. But in scriptural usage, it never means golden egg. It has many other meanings. none of which are golden egg. And the reason I'm kind of playing with this is you will certainly see translations in which Hiranyagarbha is translated golden egg. Anyway, no golden egg. On the other hand, Hiranyagarbhasya putraha, the sons of Lord Brahma, who were manasaha, born of his mind, they were sanakadayaha, they were Sanaka, etc. Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. These four mind-born sons of Lord Brahma, prapachuhu, they asked. Who did they ask? Pitaram. They asked their father. And what did they ask their father about? The yogasya gatim. Gatim, the goal. Yogasya, of yoga. Sukshmam gatim, the subtle goal of yoga, which is aikantikam, the final absolute goal of yoga. Remember, here, yoga means meditation. That gets, I don't know why, that's so much lost. In the Yoga Sutra, Yoga Sutra has to be the basis for yoga. Second sutra is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. You've all heard this. Yoga is quelling the disturbances of your mind. Is that teaching how to perform asanas? It's not even about pranayama. There's a role for asana. There's a role for practicing asanas. But the essence of what is called yoga is meditation. And that's the context here. All right. So they ask about what is the goal of meditation. And let's just, so now Sri Krishna quotes what those four mind-born sons of Brahma said. You think they said this in unison? So it says, Sanakadaya uchuhu, they said. It's not that one of them said, they said, this is a story. And it's poetry. A poetic story need not, if you want to say, well, which of the four said this? Or did they all say it together? What? Who cares? That's not the point. So, anyway, setting all those silly questions aside, let's see what they said. Sanakadaya huchuhu, Sanakadaya huchuhu. Guneshwa vishate cheto, Guneshwa vishate cheto, Gunash chetasi cha prabho, Gunash chetasi cha prabho, Katamanyonya Santiago, Katamanyonya Santiago, Mumukshor hati atitirshayoho mumukshor atitirshoho. Okay. Tatirshu is one who wants to cross. Atitatirshu, those who really want to cross. Those who are desperate to cross the ocean of samsara, which is why they're called mumukshus, mumukshoho. For those mumukshus, for those who are desirous of liberation, for those who wants to cross over this terrible ocean of samsara, katam, how? How what? And before we see that line, go back up to the top. They observe, the four mind-born sons of Brahma, they observe that Guneshu avishate chetas. Chetas, like manas, mind. The mind is avishate. And here a good translation would be attached. The mind is attached, guneshu, to the gunas. So the mind is attached to gunas, and gunaha chetasi prabho, and gunas are in the mind. Mind is attached to gunas, gunas are attached to mind. You get the point? They are very tightly interwoven. What to do? Sattva may not be the problem. Rajas and tamas certainly are the problem. But for gaining moksha, moksha means to transcend not just tamas and rajas, but even sattva. And just to make that point very clear, if it's not clear to you already, is sattva guna is a quality of the mind. The mind is constantly changing. Sometimes more tamas, sometimes more rajas, sometimes more sattva. Suppose your mind is mostly sattvika. Good. Is it that good? Because if your mind is mostly sattvika, pretty soon it won't be mostly sattvika. The mind goes on changing and changing and changing. So trying, this is, actually we talked about this before, but it's such an important point. Give me the freedom to make this point one more time. The goal of spiritual life is not to make your mind perfect. It is not to make your mind perfectly sattvika. There is no such thing as a mind that's perfectly sattvika. Minds are normal. Minds are natural. Therefore, minds will always be a combination of these three, sattva, rajas, tamas, which means moksha is a result of transcending all three. And how is that done? And that's the question here. Katam. How? Anyonya santhyagaha. How is the santyaga, literally abandonment, getting rid of, in our current context, transcending? How are they to be transcended? Anyonya, mutually, which is referring to the fact that you just don't suddenly wake up one day and transcend the gunas, but rather you first overcome tamas, then you overcome rajas, then finally you transcend sattva. It's a gradual process that is accomplished through meditation. And how that is accomplished through meditation is the subject of Brahmaji's class, of Brahmaji's explanation. Oh, just to conclude, one comment I failed to make. Remember that Uddhava asked, what was your form at the time you imparted this to your disciples, Sanaka, etc.? And I mentioned some time ago, actually I mentioned at the beginning of the class and also at the beginning of this chapter, that Sri Krishna here long ago assumed the form of a hamsa, a beautiful swan. And in the form of a swan, he gave this instruction. Brahmaji himself is going to discuss this. This topic will be discussed shortly in this chapter. But for this reason, this text, Uddhava Gita, is also sometimes called Hamsa Gita, because it's the only place where we find Sri Krishna assuming the form of a Hamsa for the sake of giving Upadesha. This is a really good place to conclude. We'll stop here. Announcements. Tomorrow we have our ongoing Vedanta class. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning. Brilliant teachings of Sri Shankaracharya. So come and join us for that. And then at 11 o'clock immediately after is our satsang, weekly satsang. Come with your questions. Come join us. We'll conclude with our prayers at the altar. Gananahan tva ganapatigam avamahe kaving gavinamupamashravastamam jeshtarajam brahmanam brahmanaspataha nashranvan utbhasira saranam. Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Hamratangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.